All right, so if you are just now joining us on YouTube, I am here with Scott DeLuzio, who is the author of the book Surviving Son. An Afghanistan war veteran reveals his nightmare of becoming a Gold Star brother. That book right there. So, as we get started, and I'll probably do this again at the end, correct me if I'm mistaken, people can get the book on Amazon, your website, Audible, and Kindle. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. Yeah. If you go to Amazon, that's probably the best place to go. You'll get it the quickest. If you look it up just on Amazon, Surviving Son, you'll on the page there, it'll have all the options for Kindle, audiobook, and all those different options. So you could do it there. If you have the apps for Kindle or Audible, you can do it through there as well, obviously. But those are the best places. I do have it available on my website as well, for the book. It's survivingsonbook.com. And if you go there you can get the same book that you can get on Amazon. It's really no different, but you can buy an autographed copy as well if you are into that kind of thing. And it was when I first published the book, people started asking, "Okay, well, can I get it signed?" And I was like, "Who the hell wants it signed from me?" Like, so like that was a new thing. I was like, okay, I guess I could put it together on a website or something. But like that kind of caught me off guard. Like,
Yeah, you're like, I'm not President Trump. I just met President Trump. So, come on. No, I mean, I think that's kind of awesome, though. I mean, that would throw me off if I found myself in the same shoes as you, and somebody wanted mine. I'd be like, for what?
yeah, right. Like, well,
um,
the funny thing is, like, I started signing them, and I was like, wait a minute, I like conspiracy theorists like hat came on, and I'm like, what are they going to do with my signature now?
mhm,
Like, what? So I started changing my signature, so it's different than like what I signed a check with.
yeah. And I remember somewhere signing something, and they looked at it and like, "Oh, you actually signed." I'm like, "Well, it does say signature, right?"
Right,
So
right.
now on your website, when you do the books, you have paperback and hardcover, right?
I do. Yeah.
So is that the same when people ask for your signature? Do they pick hardcover,
Yeah, they
paperback
could
too?
pick either one. Obviously, I was going to say they could pick any format that it's available in, but obviously not the ebook or the audio book. That would be impossible. Or, I mean, if I could figure that out, that would be amazing. But yes, in
Here's
the
my
paperback and
tablet.
hardcover,
Uh,
they can pick.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
like here's my tablet. Come sign my
yeah.
tablet because I'm reading your book and listening to it.
You don't want me to do that. It's not that
No.
important.
Uh-uh. So the one of the first question is, because I know a lot of people may not have heard of your book or read it or anything. So will you talk about the events surrounding what happened to your brother and where you were and what you were doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just a little bit of background. So, my younger brother and I, we both were in the Army National Guard. I was in the Connecticut Army National Guard. He was in the Vermont Army National Guard. We are both infantrymen, and both of the units that we were in fell under the same brigade. And that brigade was deployed to Afghanistan in 2010. And so with that brigade-wide deployment, we both found ourselves in Afghanistan. We were in different locations. So when we got there, we didn't see each other. We didn't have any joint missions or anything like that where we were together. But we were in the same country anyways for roughly the same amount of time. I got there first by a couple weeks. They just had other stuff that they were doing, and they got there a couple weeks after I did. Um, the day that he was killed. So maybe I gave it away for folks who haven't read it, but that's basically where the title of the book comes in. Is I am the son of our family who survived. So Surviving Son is the title of the book. So he was killed in action on August 22nd, 2010. That day, I was out on a mission in some remote village in Afghanistan. We actually had to have helicopters fly us in, and it was that far off the beaten path that there was no real good roads getting us there. There was no easy way to get there. So we flew in. We did our mission, kind of clearing the village, looking for Taliban activity, weapons. There's reports they stole Afghan army uniforms, so we're looking for all that kind of stuff. And I got a call later on in the day on the radio, and they said that the commanding officer was looking for me, and I was a E5 sergeant, enlisted guy, and typically whenever the commanding officer of whatever unit you're in is looking directly for you as opposed to going through the chain of command, it's either something really good happened or something really bad happened. And I hadn't done anything exceptional that day. Like I wasn't getting any medals or awards or anything for my actions that day. It was just a typical day. It was just everything regular. So I was like, okay, what went wrong? Something got screwed up. um and so I started checking all my guys' equipment. I started looking all over the place, like trying to figure out what went wrong. Eventually, I linked
You-
up with the commanding officer,
Were
and
you
go ahead.
squad leader at that point?
I was a squad leader. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so I had uh, I had a few guys under me that so I was checking their equipment, making sure they didn't lose anything. I had a list of all the sensitive items. I had serial numbers and everything like that, and I was checking every single piece of equipment, making sure everyone had everything, and they did. So I was like, okay, well, that's a relief. They didn't screw that up. So what else got screwed up? It must be something bigger than what I'm thinking of. And so eventually I linked up with the commanding officer, and he said that my brother's unit was ambushed. They were out on a mission. They got ambushed, and my brother got hit. And up until that point, I hadn't really considered the possibility that my brother could be seriously injured or killed while we were there. Like that wasn't even an option. Like that is something that happens to other people. That was the mindset I had. I know, like thinking about it, like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's the mindset that I had. So initially he said my brother got hit. So I'm thinking to myself, oh, he's injured somewhere. He's in a, army hospital, and maybe I need to be there for emotional support. Maybe we're the same blood type. I can give him blood, or I don't know, an organ, I don't know, whatever. That my mind just started racing. Like, how do I get there to be with him? Um,
Anything but death.
yeah, death wasn't even an option still at that point. Like it introduced the concept that he was not invincible, that something bad could happen to him. It just didn't go to that far. And the commanding officer looked at me, and he was like, no, like, I don't think you understand. He's been killed. And in that moment, it was like a punch in the gut. Like like if you've ever just been like strong, like punched to the gut, and you lost your breath, and you like, that's the feeling that I had. It was like I was gasping for air. I it, it was just such a difficult pill to swallow. And I like, people say like in near death experiences, like their life flashes before their eyes. I had the opposite, where it's like my future flashed before my eyes, and now I'm envisioning a future where he doesn't exist in that future. And it was just such a difficult thing to do. um in that moment, it was just really really hard for me. And like anyone else, I was crying, grieving, all that kind of stuff. That initial shock was still there. And within about 15, maybe 20 minutes or so of finding out that he was killed, our own unit started taking fire from the village that we had just come out of. And that made my grief and the sadness and everything, it made it turn to straight rage. Like, I straight up just wanted to murder everybody. Like, I just wanted to kill people. That's just the raw rage emotion that I had going on that day. And it was awful. It was by far the worst day of my life. Like I couldn't, I can't imagine anything worse than these like forces coming together, like this grief and this anger and this now fighting for my life, and all of this coming together in the same 15-20 minute time period. And the firefight lasted a little bit longer than that. So that whole time period was like just such a whirlwind of emotions. And it was probably yeah, the worst thing clearly that I've ever experienced. I don't know if you want me to get into like what he was doing and that type of stuff too, or was it more from like my point of view? I apologize. I forget how the question was worded.
No, it's okay. I mean, because that's kind of what I was looking for too, to kind of set up where this book came from, like what was
Yeah.
the incident. But I am curious, even though y'all were not on the same mission, about how far from each other were you? Do you know?
That day, I'm not 100% certain. I know our bases were about 80 or 90 miles apart, which in Afghanistan, that's that's
That's like
continents
out
away
of the
as
world.
far as that goes. Like you might think 80 and 90 miles, it's like, okay, I can drive there in, an hour and a half, 2 hours or something like that. On the highway around here, that would take days to travel that far in Afghanistan. Just the way the mountains are and the terrain and everything like that. It's just it would be pretty difficult to go uh that distance to where he was. I mean, I'm not saying you can't drive that distance in some areas that maybe already is paved in better areas where there's roads and you can drive around that way. You could do that in a in a regular amount of time, but just going over the mountains that we would have to go to get to where he was, it was not realistic. Yeah, we would have to fly to get there on a helicopter or whatever, and that would have been the only real way that we could get there.
So, for those who don't know, if there are roads there, then the infantry is not there because the infantry, I mean, you like make the road, you make a path to get places.
Well, we actually did do quite a bit of work where we were in vehicles that were either there was a one hardball road that ran kind of alongside our base, and it led straight to the Pakistan border, which is only about 2 miles away or so from our base. And so we would frequently drive on that road to get to the border. But there were other dirt roads that kind of went off and led off to other villages and other places like that that we would frequently drive on. So we did do a lot in vehicles, which I actually feel pretty fortunate for. We didn't have to hump our rucks around,
Yeah.
all over the place and have to carry all that heavy stuff. That we had the vehicles to carry the stuff for us, which was nice. It did allow us to go much further out than we would have been able to do on foot. Obviously because the vehicles are going to travel a lot faster and carry a lot more, even ammunition and water, and which water was huge, because it's just so incredibly hot there.
Mhm.
The summers, the heat just gets so high, and you're wearing full uniform, long sleeves, long pants, you got a helmet, you got your body armor, the rifle, ammo, all the stuff that you're carrying. You got to have water, and so the vehicles, we were able to load them up with water, and that was really good.
Yeah. So here's the I mean, I cannot imagine what you went through that day for so many reasons, but once so you really didn't have any time to process anything. So, like, I want to almost like Paul Harvey, not what's the rest of the story, but like, so then the next day,
Right.
what was the next day and like days following for the remainder of the time that you were there in Afghanistan and coming home? Um, how did you process everything
uh,
before you ended up? I mean, because I remember in the book you talk about getting out of the army or out of the National Guard, but up until that point, like how were you processing stuff?
yeah, not well. I guess if in a short answer, if you were looking for a Cliff Notes version, not well. But longer answer is, uh, that day, they after the firefight that we were in, they got me off that mountain pretty quickly. They had a helicopter come in. There was a couple of people who were injured, not seriously injured, just rolled ankles, that type of thing.
Mhm.
And we evacuated them, and I went out with them. Um, and when we got back to Bagram Air Base, they introduced me to my new buddy. He basically kept eyes on me for pretty much the rest of the time that I was there. Um, they took all my weapons away. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was probably on like suicide watch,
Yeah.
which wasn't from their perspective, it's not the worst decision to do. We're on a relatively safe pace, and I had somebody with me at all times who had a weapon, so it wasn't the worst thing in the world. But um, I left. So he he died um on the 22nd. The 23rd, there was a they call it a ramp ceremony. For anyone who's not familiar with what that is, it's basically where they're bringing the transfer cases, the boxes that the bodies are in. They're bringing them onto the plane that's taking them out of the the war zone. So in this case, and I kind of equate it sort of to like a wake, like a before a funeral, that type of thing, where you go and you pay your respects and that type of thing. So there was actually a lot of higher up, you know, colonels, generals, those types of people, and even people from civilian contractors and foreign militaries, or some Polish and German soldiers who came and paid their respects, which I thought was pretty nice. I mean, like those people didn't know my brother from a hole in the wall, and they still took time out of their day to come and pay their respects. That was pretty nice. Um, but I felt fortunate that I was able to be there for that, and make it so that there was some family representation there. Um, but they managed to get me on that flight that my brother was on, which left Afghanistan, went straight to Kuwait. And from Kuwait, that's where he and I kind of parted ways, where they took him off, and I don't know exactly what they were doing with him. But then I continued on my way home, and I made it back home, stopped in Germany, uh, then back to the States from there. Um, and when I eventually made it back home, um, the processing didn't really continue, like processing the grief and emotions. I don't think I found it like a new sense of purpose when we pulled down my parents' street. They the There were news vans lining the street, television, radio, newspapers, all these people looking for the story. And at first, because I was pretty much conditioned this way, at first I was like, screw these people. I do not want to talk to these people at all. They can go take a hike. And uh, I used more colorful language than that, but I'll keep it cleaner. Uh, but um, anyways, so at first I felt that way, and then there was a public affairs officer who met us at my parents' house, and he said, "Look, that's fine if you guys don't want to talk to the media. You don't have to. There's no one forcing you to. But if you don't, they're going to run the story anyways. Local hometown hero killed in action, all that." And they're going to go get sound bites from people who are putting groceries in their car at the grocery store. What do you think about this local soldier who was killed in action? And of course, the answer is going to be like, "Oh, it's sad. I feel bad," and blah blah blah.
Mhm.
Um, but it's gonna have nothing, no substance, nothing about who he was, or what type of person he was. And it's not gonna have any meat to it, anything that's gonna make his memory survive. And so I kind of found a new mission in that I wanted to make sure that people knew who he was. And it wasn't just a story that lasted for 30 seconds on the news before they moved on to the next story of whatever. So we did all, my parents and I, and our family, we went out and we did all the interviews with all the local news stations and all the newspapers. There was even some national publications that came out and interviewed my parents and me and everything. And that was my new mission, was making sure that his memory didn't die. And so we over the next year we had tons of these interviews with all sorts of different agencies, and then even after the that first year, that anniversary, then even more news requests and all that, and we continued to do these things, and that was the mission to me, was like, don't let his memory die, because
Mhm.
if his memories dies, then he's gone for good, and no one's going to remember him, no one's going to have anything to say about him. He didn't have kids. He wasn't married. I mean, he was engaged to be married, but he didn't have any kids or anything. So there's no one to carry on that legacy. So if not me, then who? You know, who's
Right.
going to do this? So that became the new mission. And again, I don't think I really was able to grieve and pick that up from that day on the battlefield when I was like straight from grief to rage.
Mhm.
I hung on to the rage. I didn't get the grief out, um, and it came out in not so great ways. You know, yelling at people for inconsequential things that really, didn't need to be, uh, blown out of proportion that way. But
Mhm.
that's just how I operated for a few years after coming back home. Um, A- And yeah, like I said, in short, not well. I did not
Yeah.
handle that very well.
Well, and I was thinking about that when you were talking about the ramp ceremony and all the thing where your mind was focused, because I think a lot of times people don't realize in the military, and I think it ends up being a problem when we get out in the military, but in the military we have a tendency to set aside our emotions or push our emotions down, because it's one of those, like we say, mission first, people always, but the emotional part of the people always is kind of like back burner.
Yep. Yep.
And then we keep it there a lot of times. And that's where, once we get out in the military, processing emotions, whether it's something as serious and big as losing a brother, a battle buddy, a whatever, a leg, whatever the case may
Hmm.
be, we then have that unresolved anger and bitterness, rage, and we end up hurting the people that we're closest to because we don't manage those emotions.
Right.
Do you? So, and I don't want us to go through the entire book and then people say, oh, well, I don't need to read it now. I can
Sure.
just listen to it. um, but one of the things that we were talking about earlier was when you went to the White House and you met President Trump, and I think it was President Trump that said, hey, he pointed up and said, Stephen is looking down on you right now. When he said that, um, and that, because I think this is one of those other cases too, where it's like you still have that, I'm an NCO, I'm a soldier, and I'm meeting the commander in chief. So there's that collective, having yourself together, but yet it's still a very personal thing. So when
Sure.
he said that, was there any emotion, or was it just I'm going to be, and this is not a bad thing, I don't think, because sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, but was it like a political, thank you, sir, but you're melting on the inside, or how was that?
It was interesting when we met him. So I remember, like, the reason why we're there, just for the listeners, was there's a Gold Star family event. He invites 50 Gold Star families, Gold Star families being those who lost a loved one in military service, and invites 50 Gold Star families to the White House around Memorial Day. Not on Memorial Day, it was like the following week, or weekend, like later that week. And this was 2019, I believe. It was, or 2018 or 19. I'm drawing a blank off the top of my head right now. But regardless, whatever the date was, um, we were there. I was already out of the military at that point for a few years, and but I did still feel like, this is the commander in chief. He wasn't the commander in chief while I was serving, but I still felt like, as a veteran, I still had that same I looked at him the same way as if I was still an NCO and I still was in the military.
It's
Um,
office, not the person.
yeah, exactly. That's and people, not to get political with any of this, but some of my family, some of my friends and stuff were, very political, and they're like, "Oh, I would never go for blah blah blah,"
Hmm.
because I hate the guy and blah blah blah. I was like, I don't care who the president was at that point. It's like you get an invitation to the White House. It's like that's a pretty big deal. I
Yeah,
don't know, like that to me, um, and again, I'm not going to get political with any of this. Like
right.
that's the bottom line. I don't care who the president is. It's still an honor to get invited. And so
Yeah.
that was my mindset and my attitude. And I'm meeting the commander in chief. And
Hmm.
um that was pretty impressive to me, I thought. It's not an everyday occurrence. Like,
Right.
you yeah, anyway.
Unless you
So
work in the West Wing, it's not an everyday experience.
right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So um so yeah, when he said that, Steven's looking down on us, and he's, all that, um kind of the whole day up until that point, there was a lot of uh I don't know, pumping, not pumping circumstance. It was like a lot of energy around it. Like we were treated like we were damn near gods walking into
Yeah.
this place. Like there was food everywhere. There was drinks, and not like in a messy way, like it was just
Oh yeah.
thrown everywhere. There was food for us. There are drinks. There's the Marine Corps band was there playing um in the hallway area, and it was really well done. Like kind of like they rolled out the red carpet for us. Um, and I felt like special in that moment. I was like, holy crap, this is really nice. And they had a lot of um upper higher up military brass there. They had people from the Department of Defense, and all sorts of folks there. And they just walked up to us and talked to us like we were just normal regular people, as if we were the important ones there.
Right.
Like,
I'm not gonna lie, if I was in your shoes and I even being out and I had my uniform on, I'd be looking around like, man, this is nice. So who's coming?
yeah, right,
Realizing
exactly.
it's
Like
still fun.
like this can't all be for me, or people like me. Like what is all this? Although, I looked at some of the other people, and I looked at them, some of the other Gold Star families, and I was like, they are the superstars. They are the ones who should be up on a pedestal. Like, who am I? But that's, I don't know, maybe that's just a humble look at things. But um so anyways, he said what you quoted there from the book. um and it kind of made me realize, like, all of this red carpet treatment that we were getting, while it was nice, and it was kind of special, and made me feel good, and all that, it made me realize the cost of admission to that event. And
Wow.
I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is really cool, this is really nice, but damn, I had to lose a brother in order to get here.
Mm.
um like, President Trump would never invite me to the White House for any other reason. Like, I'm just a regular guy. There's
Yeah.
300 million other of us out there in the
Right.
country. Like, there's nothing special. There's no reason that he would, other than that. And I was like, man, that is an incredible sacrifice. That's an incredible price to have to pay
Hmm.
for something like this. And um, it was it, it it got me emotional. It made me realize just how significant that was. And then looking around the room and seeing 50 other family, or 49 other families
Hmm.
who were in the same position, it's like, this is a lot. Um,
Yeah.
and it makes you realize that, like I was saying earlier, this type of thing doesn't happen to me. This happens to other people. Well,
Hmm.
I was in a room with 50 other families, or 50 families worth of other people.
Hmm.
Um, and there were real faces, there were real tears, there were real spouses and parents and children of these fallen soldiers and airmen and Marines and sailors and everything else. Like, they were these were real people,
Hmm.
and they had real families, real stories, real pain that was they were still carrying. You know, there were tears coming down people's faces as they were calling out the names of each of the fallen. Um, and it it made me realize just how significant this is. Um, and I'm not anti-war by any stretch of the imagination, but the next war that we get into, because just look at history, there's going to be another one.
Hmm.
It better damn well be worth it. It
Yeah.
better not be some
Another.
yeah, another Afghanistan. It better not be something like that. It better be worth it because these lives are real. And
Well,
that's what I came to that realization is like it's not just this one person that affected me. It's thousands of people.
well, and with you saying that, I didn't never even what I didn't think about either. With you being there, um, I imagine, and it sounds like it did kind of hit you, but I don't know how it would impact me. Of here we are representing 50 people who lost their life because of the military. And I know this comment could, and I'm not trying to turn it into anything else, but I know there's a lot of people who I've met through TAPS. And for people yeah, people who don't know what TAPS is, Tragedy Assistant Support Program. Wait, am I messing that up? TAPS. No, Tragedy Program for Service Members.
Yeah, I forget. Yeah, I'm messed up on the words, but it's tragedy assistance program.
Yeah. Yeah. Program is, yeah, support. Okay. Because I was putting the S before the P and I was like, wait,
Yes.
that's how you
Yeah,
spell
I
it.
think when you said that, it kind of like flipped it in my mind, and I'm like, that I know that's not right, but okay.
It's
Anyways, we
support.
got. I think we got it.
Yeah. But so
Close
there's
enough,
a,
anyways. Taps.
yeah, TAPS, that works. And Bonnie, who started TAPS, was on the podcast, and like she lost her husband in a training accident.
Mhm.
Um, I know another person whose husband was a pilot for Air Force One, but her husband ended up not being able to continue flying because he had a seizure, and then ended up dying
Mm.
because of this a grand mal seizure and the brain cancer. But like, it doesn't, ultimately, it doesn't matter if the service member was lost because of suicide, a training action, act, a training activity, killed in action, um, a health issue. It doesn't matter, because I feel like every one of those people did the same thing. They raised their right hand and said, Uncle Sam, use me and abuse me however you want for the safety of our country. I mean, that's
Sure.
just kind of like my little, how I
Yeah.
try to, because that's really what it is that when we, no matter what branch it is, no matter what job we do, we raise our right hand and say, I want to be one of the people that represents this country and continue to defend for our freedom. And that's important, I think, to know. So many times people just get caught up in silly stuff. But I mean, God, where was I going to go with that? I mean, I tried to say, hey, by the way, this is what TAPS is. And now I don't know where I was going to go with that. Um, did you, with TAPS, did you know anything about it before you, or how did you find out about it?
I honestly knew very little about anything that had to do with the support that was available for the military in the event that there was a killed in action kind of scenario or things like that. I knew very little. We did have before we deployed, we had some briefings where our families were there and said, "Hey, this is what to expect if something happens." The chaplain and a casualty assistance officer will come to the door and this is what you can expect. And There's probably some other stuff, but honestly, like I was saying earlier, that type of stuff in my mind, that just happened to other people. So I
Hmm.
wasn't really paying attention to it. It was like that's not that doesn't apply to me. That's
Right.
so I and I also, on my end, it's like if anybody's knocking at the door, I'm not going to be the one answering it. I'm going to be the one who's dead if
Yeah.
they're knocking on the door. So this
Yeah.
kind of doesn't really apply to me. So I didn't really pay all that much attention, especially because I still, at that point, this was pre-deployment. I thought my brother was invincible. Nothing bad was going to happen to him, and why would I need to know any of this stuff? Um, but our casualty assistance officers, which for the Army, they assigned two casualty assistance officers to our family. One was for my parents and me, and the other one was for my brother's fiance, to kind of just help us navigate through the you know him coming home and the funeral and the thereafter, all the stuff, coordinating his all of his personal effects coming back home, and uh things that you don't even think about, that um, you know, like going over the autopsy report and finding out like what actually happened to him. Like they were there. If we could have declined and said no, we don't want to know, and they would have been fine. Okay, no, we won't tell you. But they got that information available to us, and they provided it to us and let us know, what what did happen to him, and they made all the crap that you have to deal with, all the paperwork, and the military, they have a form for everything, and
Yeah.
they got a form for you when you die too. So it's like there's a form literally for everything, and so they helped walk us through all of that and make sure that we were crossing the T's, dotting the I's, making sure everything was squared away and in order for that. So they were great. And that was honestly, from my perspective, that was the extent of the assistance that I sought out. Um,
Mhm.
I didn't really seek out assistance from any other organizations or anything at that point. It was really just through those casualty assistance officers.
The another question that I want to ask. So you mentioned Stephen's fiance,
Mhm.
and the book you mentioned Wes. Is that Wes Black?
Yes. Yeah.
So with those two people and other people that maybe you met as it related to Stephen's death, do you still maintain contact with any of those people, or is it one of those things where it kind of tapered off as time has separated?
Yeah. So uh, a little bit of both, and maybe a option C as well. So, with some of those
For Wes,
people,
probably.
we were well, with some of those people, we were uh, introduced to them when they eventually got back home. So I got home obviously before all of them, because I came home with as my brother was killed, but they came home a few months later,
Mhm.
and we got to meet a bunch of people who served with my brother, including Wes, was one of the guys that you mentioned, and um, he was actually the guy who was the first to uh, link up with Steven after he was shot, and he was the one who he said when we talked to him, like he feels like Steven died in his arms, and I wasn't there, but I don't doubt it either. Like that's seems pretty consistent with what happened in the timeline and everything like that. So, um, you know, so he and Steven were really great friends.
Mhm.
And there's actually the book, bringing this back to the book. The book has, and not to give any spoilers or anything like that, but the book will make you laugh. It will make you cry, and sometimes at the same time, because even in his death, there's some humor in the
Yeah.
book there as well. And so, just putting that out there, just kind of a little teaser, I guess. So for anyone who's watching this later on, they can pick up the book and check that
Yeah.
part out. But anyways,
Say anything about Wes because I was just like, he's just a name that was in there, and I didn't
yeah.
want to, because the whole
Well,
point is go buy the book and read it.
yeah, and unfortunately, Wes did pass away a few years ago. He developed cancer. They believe from the burn pits in Afghanistan, and he was in Iraq as well. And I believe there were burn pits there. Um, and so he developed cancer. He fought to the bitter end with that cancer. He did all sorts of advocacy work for the veterans who were dealing with these types of cancers from the burn pits. He was on, national like CNN news, and he was talking about all this stuff, trying to raise awareness for all of this. But unfortunately, the cancer won in the end, and he unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. But like I said, he fought to the end. He was a fighter. So unfortunately, no, I do not keep in touch with him, obviously.
But
But with others, it's one of those things where it's not a regular basis type of thing, where we chat every once in a while, but we're still friendly. It's just life takes you in different directions, and we also moved away from that area of the country too. So just physical presence, we're not physically there. We where we were in Connecticut in the Northeast, and now we live out in Arizona. So just distance and things like that as well kind of makes some of that a little bit more difficult. But every once in a while we do keep in touch. I think my parents probably do more so than I do, but that's kind of more in their nature. I'm more introverted and they're more extroverted than me. So, it just kind of is what it is. So
so I think the last thing I want to ask, because I mean, I would love to talk more about what I read in the book, but I want people to read it
yeah.
instead. But, something that I think, and I thought about this when you said on your pre-deployment, where they would tell you, "Hey, here are some resources," and then so a lot of people don't. God, well, a lot of people don't know this or understand it, but they oh, it looks like somebody's coming in kind of last minute.
Okay.
Um, but let's see. Hold on a second, people who are on YouTube. This is Kevin.
Hey,
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 Kevin.
Kevin, how you doing?
how you doing? Supernatural.
Uh-oh. So, Kevin, we this is Scott DeLuzio. We've been talking for about 45 minutes or so about his book, Surviving Son.
Wait, am I late?
Yes, we started about at 6:15 Eastern time.
I thought it was 7. I don't know why I got mixed up.
It's all good. You're here. That's
You're
the
here
important
now,
part.
and
Wow.
I'm still here. Stephanie's still here. We got a party going, so let's
Who's the
let's
company?
keep it rolling.
You got to go, Kevin. No kidding.
Wow. Hey, look, I had trouble getting the book, but I finally got it. So I was listening to it
Oh, excellent.
while I was out on audio, and I tell you what, so far so good. I mean, I'm laughing, listening to your stories, and thinking about my stories. As far as I'm going through basic training. I think you're getting ready to go.
Okay.
And your brothers already went, so on and so forth. So yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Well,
Oh,
first off, thank you for grabbing a copy of the book. I appreciate that, and thanks for checking it out. I'm grateful for anybody who reads it. We were talking before of one of the missions when I came back home was like I want to keep my brother's memory alive. I want to keep that story going and
Right.
keep his name in people's minds, and
Right.
even people who've never met him before. I want to make sure that they know who this person was, so it's just not a just another statistic, another number or whatever.
Right.
So every time someone picks up a copy of the book, I don't care who it is, where they're from, what their background is, I don't even care what they think about the book. They just read the
Right.
book and they hear it. That's what is important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good. what I'm listening to so far, I'm locked in. And sometimes you have some books where it's hard to, you have to grit your teeth and really dig in, but it's easy. And you're reading it, Reed. I wasn't sure if you were reading it or if somebody else was.
Yeah, it was me.
Yeah.
And for anybody out there who is published a book and they want to do the audio book version of it, it's a lot of work to do.
It is.
But
yeah.
you know what? I think it's worth it. I've listened to some books too, some audiobooks that were done by the author, and I like those better than when it's just somebody else who's not connected to the book at all.
Right.
So I love doing that. Or love the process. It was difficult, but after it came out, I was like, this I think this came out all right.
No, it was good. Definitely authentic, and I think it makes you connect more with the author. The only time it doesn't, like if you have somebody that's very professionally good, which there are some narrators that are very good.
Sure.
Not all, very few. So, yeah.
Excellent.
So Kevin, even with you being near the beginning of the book, is there anything that you can think of that you're like, so Scott, I was about to say Stephen. Oh God.
You know what? My mother has done that all my life.
Really?
Just switching the names up. I think, but it's her fault. Both names start with an S. That's her thing.
Right.
That is one thing I can say. Me and my siblings, our names all start with different letters.
Right.
So none of them sound the same. So we're good there. So Scott, you can answer this or not if you want. So around the same area of the book that we were talking about, when near Memorial Day weekend, you go to the White House, you and 49 other families meet the president. And in that same area of the book, you mentioned that you have a coin and you had this hope that you would see it located somewhere in particular.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, did you ever end up seeing it there or not, or you don't know, or do you say you have to read the book to find out?
Well, you have to read, let's put it this way. You have to read the book to find out where I thought it was going to be. But no, I never ended up seeing it in that location. To answer that question.
I like the way you answered that. That's why I didn't want to say where, because I wanted you to write awesome.
I kind of had a feeling where you're going with that. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to roll with this.
And that's why I was kind of like, because like I said, the whole point is to get people to want to read this or listen to it or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome. So
I will say this. Let me say this. So I was in the midst of, I just picked up a new book by John Maxwell. And it seems pretty good, and he is reading it, which is always a plus. However, I stopped to start picking up your book, and like I said, it's very good so far, and I'll end up finishing it before I go back into reading, John's.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So look, all right, Scott, this is going to go in line with something you said earlier. Kevin, man, I wish you were here earlier. So we were talking about how, but it was a kind of like a celebration or awareness around Memorial Day weekend that Scott and 49 other families got to go to the White House and meet the president. And it was like no stops, no hold stops. It was like just a big blowout celebration, if you want to call it celebration. And he kind of looked around, and I was like, man, if I was in your shoes and I saw this red carpet rolled out, I'd be like, oh man, this is awesome.
Right.
Who's coming? And I'd be looking around, and Scott and the other 49 families who lost somebody, the red carpet was out for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that would kind of blow my mind, just to be like, man. But so it was really cool. It was really cool. The question that I have, though, and by the way, Scott, Kevin was human resources in the Army.
Okay.
So you mentioned that there's a form for everything. I bet you he would be like, "Amen. You have no idea."
Right, right.
But so the question that I have, and this is where I was going to go a moment ago, was before you deploy, you have all of these not outside of the like pre-deployment training, you have all of these informational things of if you ever lose somebody, here's what you need to know for you and your soldiers. And then these briefings where I think it's very easy to tune out because it's kind of like, yeah, just let's move on with it. And then the same thing when you come home. And Scott, I want to get your thoughts on this because when we come home from deployments, there are these mandatory forms that we have to fill out,
Mhm.
and we race through them because it's like I just want to go home. I want to be alone, or I want to be with my family, or whatever it
Oh
is.
yeah.
You're done with deployment. You want to like let me go, Uncle Sam. So for you, not only did you experience what a typical, I don't know if that's the right, if I can use typical, but you not only did you experience what a typical infantryman would experience on a deployment, but oh, by the way, you also lost your brother.
Right.
So did you do what most of us do and just be like, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. And then later on be like, crap.
Yep. Yeah.
How,
Yes
and
to everything on that.
yeah,
Yes, I did experience that, and that's exactly what I did. So I don't know the reason why they do this way. So I was in Connecticut, Army National Guard. That's where my family was. That's where I came back home to. But I get a phone call and said, "Hey, you need to complete your post deployment, medical checks and all the crap that you got to go through when you get back home." And you got to go back to Indiana where you did it originally, where you did like
Oh,
where you processed out of the country. You got to process back in the same place. I'm like, you guys don't have computers? Like you can't do that
right,
like here?
right.
Like what the hell? Like why do I have to go all the way back to Indiana? So I got there and they told me you got 3 days to get everything done. And I was supposed to be there for 3 days. Well, I got there, later in the day on day zero, I guess. Day one, so I checked into the barracks, slept there. Day one that I'm there, I blew through everything:
I
dental,
bet.
medical, mental health, DD 214, all the stuff coming off I have to do, all that stuff. I blew through it one day, and I went to them and I was like, can I go talk to someone in travel and like get a ticket home tonight or tomorrow morning or something? Like I'm done. I'm not sticking around here for another 2 days. This is stupid. Get me home. Um, so I blew through all of that. Um, and one of the things that I ended up kicking myself years later for is so my my records that I had when I came back home, I didn't have any of the paperwork for any like uh some of the awards, not any of the awards, but some of the awards and badges and things like that that I earned while I was in Afghanistan. I didn't have any of the paperwork with that, which you kind of need when you're doing your DD 214. And I was like, you know what, I screw it, I don't care. Just fill it out as it is, and it just won't be complete. It just won't have everything on there, and I don't care. I want to get home. And years later, I found a copy of my DD 214. I was looking through it, and I was like, wait a minute, this isn't on here, and like this stuff should be here. So I filed the paperwork, and I actually got it amended, and they updated it with the correct information. So I
Yeah,
did end up getting that done years later.
right.
However, this is something that I don't think I put in the book, so I'll kind of add this. Um, it actually took me writing to my state senator um, to get the push to actually get that done, because I had filed the paperwork and it was years that went by and crickets. I didn't hear anything from the wherever you file it. I forget now, wherever you file that paperwork. Um, I didn't hear a word from anybody. I didn't even get paperwork back. I didn't get a confirmation, anything. I got nothing. And so I wrote to my senator and I said, hey, this is the paperwork I filed. This is where I sent it. This is how I did it. And blah, blah. About 4 or 5 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail and it has my corrected the DD-215, I guess is the corrected
Yeah.
form, and
Mhm.
and it was all done, and it had a letter from the senator and everything. It's like, hey, we got this all done for you. You're all good to go. I'm like, holy crap, that's what it took. Like,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be that hard that you got to go bug your senator to get this thing done. But hey, I did, and it it worked out. But at the time, going back to what we were talking about, I didn't care. I didn't care what
Yeah.
was on that piece of paper. I just wanted to go home. I want to be with my family. I wanted to hug my wife, hug my son, and be with them, because that's where my emotions needed me to be. I didn't need to be there filling out paperwork. Um, and and in the mental health uh, department, they would have us. They sit down and like talk to us like, oh, how are you doing after getting back home? Everything good? Yep. Check the box. Everything's good.
Right.
Everything was not good. Everything was far from good.
Mhm.
But I wanted to be home. I wanted to be with my
Yeah.
family. I didn't want to be sitting there talking to some stranger about things that happened, you know, 8,000 miles away or however far away it is. Like, I didn't want to talk about that stuff. I just wanted to go back home. And that's, I think, unfortunately, after doing my podcast for the last almost 5 years now, um, talking to other veterans, um, that is a very common scenario where people just, I don't care about your paperwork and
Right.
your, yeah, check the box. If that box, checking that box is going to get me home, check it. That's all I
Mhm.
care about.
So here's what my question would be then, because I don't I have a hard time believing there's anybody who actually answers it honestly.
Hmm.
And so now looking at it hindsight, how should the military do it differently now? How instead of finishing this paperwork to be your ticket home, how do you think the military should, the Department of Defense or whoever should set this up? Should you be home for a couple weeks and then have this? How should it be done?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's I do feel bad for the folks who have to kind of come up with these policies and figure this
Mhm.
stuff out, because you could have somebody who is in a different situation where they come home and they're really in a bad way, and they they're at home with their family, and they end up killing people because they needed that help and they needed that support, and it's like, well, we waited too long and now it's too late. So I can see, kind of the sense of urgency. Let's get this initial phase done, maybe. But maybe having regular check-ins, you know as part of your training, like build that into the training, as opposed to go like infantrymen, as opposed to going back out into the field and doing more, battle drills and whatever it is that you guys are doing out in the field now. Have a day where it's like, this is what we're doing. We're going to go talk to somebody, and we're going to have these conversations. We're going to decompress, and we're going to unwind, and we're going to make sure that we're all good to go, and everybody's going to go talk to somebody. And you don't have to get into any great details with them if you don't want to, but you're going to at least have a conversation and see where it goes, and from there, we're going to make it available to you to have additional conversations if need be. But make it part of the regular training day. They're going to be away from their family during that training anyways, when they're, out on the range or out in the field or whatever it is that they're doing. They're going to be away from their family typically during a duty day anyways. um, Make it part of that. Just use that as a way to um, you know help them, so that it's not like a strange thing, like you're the only one who's, out of all of us, you're the only one who's going to talk to mental health,
Mm.
or going to the doctor for some physical injury that you might have. Like, make that available, make that just part of uh, the regular duty assignments that they have. And that way it's not like you're singling any one person out, like,
Mhm.
oh, you're that one
Mhm.
strange person, like that's not helpful, really. And taking people away from their families more than they need to be is not
Mhm.
helpful either. In my case, sending me halfway across the country to Indiana wasn't very helpful for my mental health. Um,
Mhm.
I definitely wasn't as honest as I should have been with some of the questioning, because I knew that was just going to keep me there longer. Even if it was one day longer, it was going to keep me there. So why couldn't I do that stuff at home? Like they have, you know, military facilities near where I am, or even VA facilities. I'm sure they can set something up in one of those to process people back in. Like that type of stuff should have been thought of well before, we were deployed. Like to have that facility set up so that we could do this when we were at home.
Mhm. What about you, Kevin? Because you deployed to Iraq, correct?
Hmm. Yeah, I
So
think they gotten better. I don't know, Scott, when you had returned, um, but I think my last deployment was 2010.
Yeah, that's when
Um,
mine was.
yeah, was it? Is that right? Yeah, 2010. So I was in Hawaii, so I think they were a little bit more intentional. So the last one, they ended up doing a lot while we were deployed.
Oh, okay.
Uh, and so that helped when we got back to where we wouldn't be doing all this stuff, when we got back, for the very reason, things that you stated.
Yeah.
However, we did have to, do some follow-ups. Of course, you turn in stuff or whatever. And I think did something maybe real quick, just reintegration stuff.
Mhm.
And then we would have a follow up down the road, where we check in. But even then, I think there could be some more thinking, and capitalizing on the tools that you have. We've been brought up to really believe in this buddy system,
Yeah.
and then as the 9/11 happens, it kind of goes out of the window, to some degree. And so that would be a great value. And then just, I don't know, people, because I was, going the part that I did go through, and you just say, yep, yep, check, 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 and so it had me thinking, man, I know I did the same thing, and was I really, all there? Because I know I still had some issues. Like when I first came back, I didn't want to be around anybody.
Hmm.
I kind of irritable and all these different things. And
but here's the question that I'd like to see if you could hone in on with that
mhm,
is you could change anything about the way the military does the reintegration so that I'm not having to fill out this form and do all this checking block just so I can go see my family. Is
right,
there something else that can be done? You still accomplish the same goal, but I mean, I think, like I said earlier, I think we all do the yes, I'm good. No, I'm not having bad
right,
dreams. No, no nightmares. Yeah, I'm great. No, I'm not drinking any alcohol. Whatever the case may be. I mean, what is something that we can do differently? Because I agree. The thing that I agree with Scott is we're going to answer however we need to answer so we can go see our family.
Right.
And but I also agree that if we put this off too long, what if somebody attempts suicide or dies by suicide?
right,
And then it's like, well, then we waited too long. So how can we do that to where there's like a happy medium where we don't lose anybody
right,
completely, but we also don't lose them by letting them check in the block and say, and have them, whether it's the DOD or the VA, say, but he checked the block saying he was
right,
good. So I don't know
Right.
what the problem was.
Well, I like what Kevin said about doing some of this stuff while you're still deployed.
right,
Like
Yeah.
yeah,
start getting that process done, because you're going to be deployed for X amount of days, or,
right,
months, weeks, years, whatever. You're going to be deployed for that time period anyways.
hmm,
Mhm.
Towards the end, okay, there's that date in the future that we're leaving on, X date. Let's all right, we need a week to or 2 weeks to do all this stuff. Let's start doing it 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
Obviously you can't turn in all your equipment. You still need that
Right.
stuff while you're there, but that stuff could easily be done in an afternoon or something, where you just bring it in and turn it in and make sure it's all good to go. But for the most part, you can do so, like the paperwork stuff that should be easily be done while you're deployed, right?
I tell you, it made a tremendous difference because honestly, we hear what you're saying, but this the military, this the army. I hear what you're saying, but we're gonna get there and it's gonna be like this. But to their credit, it wasn't. So most of the stuff we, front loaded it while we were deployed. So when we got there, it was we did the ceremony. We got to the hangar, did the ceremony, saluted. That was it.
Peace out.
We were off with our family. Now the challenge that you have, so now we have resiliency. I don't know how far into resiliency the military is rooted itself into, but I know if you can make that to where it's not just to check the block, and people really own it, and it becomes a part of the culture, and not just blowing things off, because we maybe mismanage stuff or we don't properly attend to things, and after a while it starts off good, but then it ends up being bad.
Well, I can tell the reserve side of the house. So all three of us have the three different components. Because of my 24 years, most of it was on active duty time, but a lot of those active duty time was me put on Title 10 orders as a reservist. Right. In the reserves, I think once a quarter, our reserve duty was 1 weekend a month.
Right.
And a quarter, we would do a facet of the resiliency training, but that was it.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I was the one that did our annual suicide training.
Right.
And, I would say, nope. Yeah, I know we can start now, but this is annual training. It's required for everybody and it's serious. Well, who do you think you are? You're a staff sergeant. You're an E6. I'm like, and I'm the one that's doing the training. So if you want me to continue to do the training, I need everybody here.
Right.
And the answer that I would get a lot of times from senior leadership is, we're got things to do. Okay, well, good luck not killing yourself. I mean, I never said that because I don't want to make light of it. But yeah, with resiliency, or better yet, with the things that matter, those are the things that we blow off the quickest and the easiest. Right. So another question.
And Tiffany, I think the problem is also that we look at it as a soft skill.
Yes.
And that's why we blow it off. Because if it was anything, if you were out there talking about, doing grunt stuff or whatever, you're doing that. Period.
Oh, yeah.
But when it comes to, resiliency and mental health and all, that's that huggy stuff, that's that soft stuff. And so we end up, kind of checking out or just doing the bare minimum, opposed to doing, really digging deep and, asking those tough questions and having those tough conversations.
Yeah, that's kind of the
great about us. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's what I think is great about us doing this. We have a person and a chaplain assistant, so we all bring different to the table.
Right.
So with that, so I guess to play devil's advocate.
Don't play the devil. I get chaplain assistant to play the devil's advocate. What's wrong with you? I'm gonna say something.
So, okay. I know that. Okay, so then let me rephrase that. Scott, let me poke a hole in something that you said.
Okay. Much better.
That's what infantrymen do pretty well. We poke holes in things.
Yes.
Bro.
So a question that I would ask, because I think what you said is very good, both of you. Making it part of the training, like the training that you do regularly. Also, one of the things you said, Scott, was having this as part of the like a piece of what you're doing, even when you get back home, talking to that. What if it feels like, what if you tell me I have to go talk to a chaplain, a mental health counselor, a somebody? Am I going to be open to doing that, or am I going to be even more closed up because I feel like I'm being forced to do it?
I think that's definitely a good question. And as I was saying that before, I was thinking of some TV shows that I've seen, some cop shows or whatever, where they, after this event, you got to go talk to the therapist, and they're like, I'm fine, I don't need to do that, and they're all, trying to put on a brave face and whatever, and they're sitting there and they're all closed off and they're not saying anything. It's like, no, I don't need this, whatever. But I think the job of whoever it is that they're talking to is to kind of chip away at whatever it is and kind of try to figure it out and see if there is something to talk about. Maybe there's not. In some cases, they might be good to go and they may not need to talk about anything. Everybody's going to be different. They're going to deal with stress and traumatic incidents. They're going to deal with them in a different way. You can have two people in the same exact scenario. One person who's gets messed up mentally and another person who's perfectly fine after that same exact event.
Yeah.
And so, it's I think the job of that, whoever that person is, that I'll just use a generic term, the counselor that they're talking to figure that out. Like, is that person okay? Or is there something that they're holding back? And can I chip away at those layers and figure out what's going on under the surface? And there may be nothing, but there may be something too. And so that's, I think, their job to figure that out. It's real easy to just say, no, I'm fine, and check a box on a piece of paper, because that's pretty final. You just check the box and it's done. You pass it in and they put it in a file somewhere, and they probably never look at it again until they need to. But the therapist or the counselor, whoever, they need to be able to figure out what really is going on with this person, and not just accept the check the box answer.
Yeah. I think with that, Scott, that person, those positions, they are crucial positions. So it shouldn't just be, bean counters, so to speak, but somebody who really cares and, again, own it, to where they can really, dig through the weeds, like you say, kind of discern, there's more to it than what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I got it. But, just want to make sure, just, like Tiffany said, poke the holes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. I agree. It needs to be someone who actually gives a damn about this. You can't just have someone who's there who's ready to just pencil whip out all this and just pass people through. And I do understand that this is a big job that we're talking about here. You have a company, a battalion, a brigade worth of soldiers or airmen or whoever coming back home from a deployment. You got to be prepared with more than just a handful of people. You got to be prepared with your own army of people who are going to be able to take care of this. It can't just be a 2 or 3 people who are going to handle a whole battalion or something.
Yeah, and that's usually a lot of times it kind of ends up like that. But but the ones I had this one friend and leader. He used to say, great units do routine things routinely. And so when you go ahead and you do the stuff and you don't, cut any corners, you really, it's like what you said with the drill sergeant, we respect your decision to join the army in a time of war, but don't confuse I'll respect you, right? So and that's how it should be, hard
Sure.
but fair.
Yeah.
And so I don't get it twisted. I'm going to do a job because I care about you, and I care about your family, and I care about you being whole and not being you're here but you're still back in Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever you're at.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you gotta be willing to do the work and actually give a damn about it.
What? I mean,
I mean, good enough for government work.
Right.
Yeah. Just it. I kept on saying that when we started. I kept on saying good enough for government work, and I was like, man, I need to find something else to say. I need to stop saying that.
Right. Some people take offense to that, but anybody who wants to be offended, they're going to be offended regardless.
Well, look, that's like I see all, and I know you guys have seen it too. You see all of these advertisements of military grade phone. It'll protect your phone from being, or the engine in this vehicle is military grade. And I'm like, you know that the people say that to advertise their item, they never served in the military, because for those of us who did, we want a military grade engine in our vehicles.
No, the military grade is relying on the lowest bidder. Like that's military grade.
Right.
Because see what happened was, I'm like,
oh my goodness.
So, Scott, the book, is there anything else about the book that you want to share with people besides go buy it, listen to it on Audible, purchase it on Kindle, hard copy, soft copy, paperback?
Yeah, definitely do that. Those things are definitely great things. The book here again, where's my camera? There it is. Surviving Son. And I wrote the book. I started writing it as really just notes. They're just for me, just remembering things, events, places, feelings, stuff like that, so I could remember what happened years later. And your mind plays tricks on you down the road, and I don't want to forget things, so I want to just write things down, jot it down. But a few years after that, I realized, that mission of carrying on my brother's memory and remembering, who he was and the sacrifice that he made, and that was a story that I felt like needed to be out in the public, that more than just whoever stumbled across the notebook that I was jotting notes down would be able to see. So, I put it out there because, maybe some other families aren't quite willing to be that vulnerable and put their family stories out there. But this is a story of a real person. He was a real great person. It was one of those funny people that everyone loved being around. He laughed and joked and just made things better when he was around. It was just that's just kind of the person he was. And so I wanted to honor his memory and talk about him and talk about the sacrifice that he made, and make sure that people know that it's not just a faceless name on the news that you might hear when somebody is killed in action. There's a real story, which is why, and Kevin, you're kind of in that point of the book, which is why I talked about our childhood and growing up and the type of people that we were and things like that. So you kind of get to know that, like, this is an actual person. It's just not it's not just a character in a storybook. It's a real person. We did real people things. We went to sporting events. We played games in the backyard. We got in trouble as kids. We did the things that people do in life. Like, you can relate to that as if that was a neighbor or something. And you can look at that and it's like, man, let me look next door to me right now at one of my neighbors across the street or something like that. Some of the other people that I know, maybe not real well like I do a family member, but just one of those other people. And if one of those people just they got shipped off to war and they never came back, like, holy crap, that is a real person and it's a real part of my life, and that could be anybody. And I just want to make that clear to people that there are real people out there, and that's kind of what I was hoping to accomplish with the book.
Scott, I
something
tell
that's,
you,
yeah.
So I didn't lose, my brother or anything in the war or anything, but the one thing, mission accomplished is that, I'm listening to the book and I'm reflecting back, to my childhood with my brother, or, and like I said, so everything that I've heard so far, I'm reflecting back to my experience,
Sure.
Similar experience up to a point. And, so mission accomplished and causing, the person, whoever's reading it, hey, this is real. And you can probably relate, so yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.